Hey folks, it's Rob, and welcome back to the series of me basically reading through the Red Box Player's Manual from the 1983 Red Box set. Uh, I appreciate the attention you give to these videos. I do. Uh, I don't say this much, but if you like this content, like is very helpful. And uh, I can't promise much, but hey, subscribe. Um, this content is a little out of the ordinary for my channel historically. Mostly it was video games. But I don't know. Sometimes I feel like playing some video games again, and sometimes, because I still play video games, honestly, it's not like I don't. Um, but there's also like all this tabletop I've opened myself back up to, and I kind of want to talk about it, which is why I've been doing these videos. And once I've finished this, we will need to see what I'm going to do next. But I have some life events coming up that are probably going to prevent me from recording. I have a lot of videos stockpiled in this series. By the time you're hearing this, we're going to be well along. It's mid-May right now at the time of recording. And we should be in June by the time this video airs, by my reckoning. So hopefully I'll be feeling better by then. So we were getting into this dividing the treasure section, and then we've already did alignment. So when we were doing the player character generation. So we're going to move on to adventuring rules here. So let's get to dividing the treasure. The amount of, and remember, the game, they recommended that you work this out before you start your play session. That to prevent arguments primarily. And this doesn't have to be the way you divide treasure. You can work out your own way you want to divide treasure. But this is how they lay it out for those who, need an example. So, dividing the treasure. The amount of treasure your characters find is decided by the dungeon master, who places the treasures and monsters in the dungeons. The DM is also responsible for giving experience points to characters at the end of the adventure. The division of treasure is usually left to the players, although some DMs have their own rules for it, especially with well-developed fantasy worlds. There are several methods for dividing treasure, as both normal coins, gems, and jewelry, and magical potions, wands, etc. treasures can be found. As a rule, the division of treasure should not be based on the amount of work done by different characters. Fighters will usually be more active than others, and thieves will have little to do, although their role may be played well. There will be maybe a few traps and locks to deal with. But each character risks danger in search of treasure, and each should have done special work as needed. It is not the character's fault if few needs arose. Beginning players should use the following method for dividing treasure. Other methods are discussed at the end of this booklet, but whatever methods are used, they should be decided upon before the party goes on adventures to avoid arguments afterwards. Magical treasure. Magical treasures are usually divided first, and the results affect the division of normal treasure. Each character may pick one item each from the magical treasure found. The order in which they chose may either be decided as a group or by random roll. If by random roll, each player rolls 1d20. The player with the highest roll picks first. If there is a tie, everyone rolls again. When all magic items have been taken, divide the normal treasure. Now, normal treasure, that's essentially cash and gems and anything just like valuable for, say you found a stack of furs that the bandits stole, and no one knows who the owner is, so you can't just go and return it for the bounty. You're going to, well, let's go sell it to the merchant, right? Normal treasure. Count the number of shares to be given using the following method. Some magic items are permanent. A magic sword, for example, is never used up, but a potion is only good for one use. A potion is called a temporary magic item. If all the characters in a party get permanent magic item, divide all normal treasure equally, whatever the division of any temporary magic items. If everyone gets a magic item but one or more of the items are temporary, each character with permanent item gets 1/2 share of normal treasure. If there are not enough magic items for one to be gained by each character, then 1/2 share of normal treasure goes to each character with a temporary magic item, but a character with a permanent magic item gets no share of normal treasure. Finally, divide the total normal treasure by the number of shares, adding the number of 1/2 shares and full shares according to the instructions above to find the value of each share. Each character then takes 1 share, 1/2 share, or no share, depending on the distribution of magic items. This method is fair. Those who receive permanent magic items, which can be used in every adventure, get less treasure. Which I find hard to argue with. If you're getting a permanent magic item that's useful to you, yeah, you're going to be much happier with it than your share of, like, the 1,200 gold pieces that you found. And maybe that is if everyone, if you're the only one who got the magic item, maybe it's fair you didn't get any of the cash, right? But work that out amongst your own players, amongst yourselves, and make an agreement. To think of precedent, think of pirates, of seamen serving at sea who aren't pirates. A lot of people signed on for shares on a whaling ship, for example. Or to go with a fictional example, and to go back to Tolkien again, obviously, Bilbo is hired on for his share, right, of the treasure. And he had a contract. And, his duties were explained, and, provision was made for the execution of his estate in the event he passed on. Adventuring rules. Here are some additional details you will need at some point during your adventures. So here's our kind of potpourri, as it were, right? Using your equipment. Some of the standard equipment may be new to you. The following items can be used in various handy ways. Iron spikes and hammers. These can be used to wedge doors open, provide grips for climbing, pry things loose, and so forth. I'm going to point out here that it says provide grips for climbing. Player characters can climb walls and surfaces. Thieves have the special ability to climb sheer walls and surfaces. The player characters can climb a rope up that the thief drops down after going up a 30-foot ledge, right? But you can also give them hand grips so they can climb. Mirror. Some creatures can turn you to stone with their gaze. If you use a mirror to look around corners, for example, and examine empty rooms or so forth, you might avoid a nasty surprise. And, it doesn't have to be just you're avoiding turning to stone, but, he'll silently get to the corner, looking around the corner with a mirror. You might notice that, like, 4 goblins are waiting over there by the intersection, right? Rations and wineskin. Your character's food and drink. Standard rations may become moldy and unusable if you stay in a dungeon overnight, so carry iron, preserved rations whenever possible. Standard rations are fine for long trips overland. Rope. This can be used tied to an iron spike and used to climb up steep walls. May also be useful in tying up captured prisoners, pulling doors open, etc. And yeah, rope is a very useful tool. I can assure you there's plenty of reasons why you may want to use rope. It's not just something that you carry around for no reason. Wolf's Bane. This herb is useful when fighting werewolves and other lycanthropes. You can use it as a weapon. Try it and see what happens. Wooden pole. A character in front of a party may sometimes avoid being surprised if a pole is used to tap on the floor ahead, poke into corners, touch suspicious-looking items, etc. And that's true. But again, the 10-foot pole, if it's not a collapsible pole, is actually just an unwieldy object. Make sure it's a collapsible pole. One you can screw together or fit into itself. Or just twist friction kind of thing. Doesn't matter the mechanism, but really, if it's just a straight up 10-foot long pole, just imagine walking around your own house with a 10-foot pole. Have you tried to move a couch downstairs? It's a joke for a reason. Time. Time in D&D games is usually kept track of in turns of 10 minutes of game time. A turn is not a measure of real time, but is a measure of how much a character can do in the game in a given amount of time. During encounters in combat, the DM uses rounds of 10 seconds of game time instead of turns, and each character can perform only one action during a round: a swing of a sword, a spell, some movement, or some other action. A battle normally only lasts a minute or two, but is counted as a full turn because your characters rest afterwards, clean up their equipment, and do other assumed normal actions. In D&D games, it would take too long for you to describe each action your character does. Many actions are assumed and do not need to be talked about, such as eating, resting, after and during travel, normal character behavior, and so forth. The DM should decide how long any action takes. Time for you, the players, is called real time to avoid confusion. A game usually takes 2 to 3 hours of real time, but may last for days in game time. The DM may say, for example, you take 2 hours to walk into the dungeon, and so on and so forth. On the other hand, it may take you a half an hour of real time to play a battle that lasts only a few minutes of game time. Movement. In D&D games, movement is given as the number of feet a character may move in one turn. A single character moves up to 120 feet per turn in a dungeon-like setting unless a lot of weight, such as armor, is carried. The movement speed may slow down to as little as 30 feet per turn depending on the amount carried. Groups move at the rate of the slowest character. A character wearing heavy armor moves at half the normal rate, 60 feet per turn. Though 60 feet per turn may seem very slow, it includes many assumed actions, such as mapping, peeking around corners, resting, and so forth. During encounters, movement is much faster. Characters can move 1/3 their movement rate per round up to 40 feet per round during battles, 20 feet per round in armor. In addition, you may run away from creatures at the even faster rate of 120 feet or 60 feet if armored per round. However, you may only run for 20 rounds at most, 5 minutes, before becoming exhausted. If you are exhausted, you must rest for 3 turns, 30 minutes. If you are forced to fight without rest, the exhausted characters are penalized in combat. Monsters gain a +2 bonus to their hit rolls, and you must subtract 2 from all your character's hit rolls and damage rolls. Any successful hit will still inflict at least 1 point of damage. So, yeah, you're tired, you're worn out, you're you know, you ain't fit to fight at that point. Before you get that far, you should turn and fight. Pick your chances and opportunities, right? If you're going to be forced to fight, you might as well fight before you're exhausted. Listening. You should always listen carefully while you are exploring a dungeon. You may hear noises that give clues about what lies ahead. To hear anything, all the characters must stop moving and be very quiet. Armor and weapons clank and rattle and when you move, spoiling your attempts at listening. To listen for noise, simply tell the DM that you are doing so. The DM will roll to see if you hear anything. When listening at closed doors, each character can try once. Thieves have better chances than other characters. Undead creatures like skeletons and ghouls make no noise at all. It is the silence of the dead, after all, Light. Most dungeons are dark. Be sure to bring a tinderbox which contains wood shavings, flint, rocks, and a small piece of steel. No matches or lighters in this medieval world. Very true. You will also need something to light with your tinderbox. A torch is cheapest and will burn for 6 turns, 1 hour. It cannot be easily turned off. A lantern is more expensive and uses oil. 1 flask of oil will burn for 24 turns, about 4 hours in a lantern. The lantern must then be refilled using another flask of oil. A lantern has shutters, which can be closed for temporary darkness if desired. A torch or lantern shines 30 feet in all directions. If you are carrying a light source, a torch or a lantern, other creatures will probably see the light as you approach and will not be surprised. Remember that you only have 2 hands. If you are carrying a light source in one hand, then the other hand may hold a weapon or shield, but not both. Dwarves and elves have infravision, a special ability which enables them to see 60 feet in the dark by seeing heat. This means that they can move and fight without light, but it's risky. They cannot see a pit in the floor, for example, unless it is warmer than the air above it. They may or colder, as the case may be. They may also stumble over objects which are the same temperature as the floor, unless they are very careful. And just going to interject there for a moment that halflings don't have infravision in this game either. They have normal sight. So only the two classes have infravision. There is a spell for infravision. It's not the lowest level spell, but it does exist. By and large, you're going to need a light source. And I recommend that once your character or mage is able to cast in continual light, you just make use of that, because that stuff is handy. It doesn't take much thought to think about how I can put away a continual light item and bring it out when I need it. And if you can throw those light sources to the ground and equip your weapons properly, and that just a tip there for you. Doors. You will find two kinds of doors in dungeons: normal and secret doors. A normal door is made of wood and often has metal reinforcing strips across it. Some have metal hinges, a ring or doorknob, or possibly a lock, either a padlock hanging from a latch or a lock inset into the door. Normal doors can often be forced or broken open, but a strong bar of wood mounted on the other side will prevent this. To open a normal door, just tell your DM that you're doing so. The DM will assume that you are turning the handle, pulling the ring, or pushing on it gently. If it doesn't open, you may tell the DM, "I'll force the door." Your character is then using strength to open it, which may be successful if the door is merely stuck. It says stuck quite, and then quite common in dungeons. I think that's just an extra quite there. Right here. If the door still does not open, it may be locked, barred, or closed magically, or your attempt might have simply been unsuccessful based on the dice roll. Try again. However, if a door is not open on the first try at forcing it, any monster on the other side will not be surprised by your party. A secret door does not look like a door. It may simply be a section of wall that can be moved, or maybe a small normal door hiding behind a curtain, rug, or some other furnishing. Any character may look for secret doors, but they are usually hard to find. Your DM will roll to see if you succeed, but you must tell the DM that you're searching for one and where. For example, I'll search for secret doors along the east wall of the room. It takes 10 minutes, one turn, of searching a 10-foot by 10-foot area to find a secret door. Less time will mean automatic failure. And in the example of like a door hidden behind a curtain, if you say you're going to look behind a curtain, that will do, right? If the door is a hidden secret door behind a curtain, then you're doing the regular search. But if it's just a regular door behind a curtain, obviously you just need to look behind the curtain. Now, if you don't look behind the curtain, what can I tell you? Things are what they are. Traps. Dungeons often contain traps. Old ruins usually have more traps than caves. The most common trap is a hidden trap door, which falls open as a character walks on it, dumping the character into a pit. There could be something in the pit: spikes, deep water, or a monster. Beware! Many other traps are possible. A chest or treasure may be coated with poison, deadly if touched, but easily removed by rinsing with water. Some poisons are sticky and can only be removed with wine. A blade trap may be found nearly anywhere, and usually inflicts enough damage to kill first or second level character. Dwarves may be trapped on the handles, locks, or surface. Small darts may be found inside a lock and may be poisoned for many different effects: paralysis, damage, death, etc. If you wish to search for a trap, tell the DM where you are searching, and the DM will roll to see if you find anything. You might have no chance to find a small trap, such as the type on a door or treasure. Thieves have a percentage chance at detecting any type of trap. Dwarves have better chances of finding large traps, such as pits, than other characters. It again takes 10 minutes one turn to search for a trap in a small area, such as a 20-foot square room or a 20-foot long section of corridor. If less time is spent, no trap will be found. Wandering monsters. You will usually encounter monsters in rooms rather than corridors, but the DM makes dice rolls to see if any wandering monsters come by. This type of creature usually has little or no treasure and is a dangerous nuisance. Wandering monsters are often determined by the type of dungeon. For example, caves could contain wandering animals. A castle ruin might contain wandering skeleton guards. Miniature figurines. As you try to imagine your characters and the areas they explore, it is helpful to use miniature figurines to represent the characters and monsters. Several types of miniature figures are available from toy and hobby shops worldwide, made of metal or plastic and suitable for painting. You should be able to find figures that look very similar to your characters. Official Dungeons & Dragons figures are available. At this time, Ral Partha was a go-to name for that kind of thing. Figurines were made of lead, pewter. I own many. I painted and shaved them and to adjust them. And nowadays, most miniatures are kind of made out of plastic. Like I got this little guy here just sitting in front of me because he's actually broken. As you can see here, his little, I don't know, battle banner is kind of broken off. This little goblin on a warg, or wolf rider. But, yeah, this guy was 3D printed. That's where we are in the world nowadays. I didn't print him off myself. I bought this guy. Somebody else painted him. I can't lay any credit to this guy. But I need to super glue his thing back on, which is why he's on my desk. To keep track of the party's marching order, line up the miniature figurines on the playing table. You may use a large piece of graph paper to draw the rooms and corridors found by the characters, and simply move the figures around on the paper. Several types of more permanent playing surfaces are available in plastic and vinyl, and the rooms drawn on them can be easily erased. Yeah, it had a vinyl wipeable, like an A3 sheet, something about the size of this crafting mat, covered in squares, was a handy thing to have. And you had wipeable markers, and you just draw out large versions of the map, and you can have your figures on it. The group I played with most as a young man and teenager, we generally didn't have miniatures for regular play, although we did have miniatures. I had quite an old army of undead miniatures, which we would use for tabletop kind of Monty Hall wargaming games, or use the battle system, which I have a copy around here somewhere, but I'm not going to get up and get it for you. But that's by the by. A lot of our regular play was all theater of the mind, as they call it now. Scale movement. When using miniature figures on a playing surface, a ruler is used to determine distance moved. 1 inch represents 10 feet. A movement rate of 60 feet per turn means that the figure moves 6 inches per turn. Spell ranges and other ranges are easily determined when accurate scale is used, which is very true. You don't have to make an inch 10 feet. You can use 2 inches for 10 feet, whatever you like. But make sure it's consistent scale, right? Right. Let's see. We got encounter rules, which is actually quite a little section here. And then we have retainers and the world of gaming, which is just kind of more advertising and what the future holds for you, kind of. And then we have the glossary. We're standing at 24 minutes. I don't think this is a lot for 6 minutes. So what we'll do is we'll do the retainer rules here. Retainers. A retainer is a person hired by a character to help out on an adventure. Retainers are sometimes called hirelings. Retainers are never characters run by the players. The DM always plays the part of any retainers hired. They are called non-player characters, or NPCs. All the people in any D&D game other than the characters are NPCs. Ask your DM if retainers are permitted in the game. You cannot use retainers if there are plenty of other player characters or PCs to do the jobs. In games with only 1 or 2 players, retainers are often used. If you want to hire a retainer, use the following procedure. Find NPCs interested in working as retainers. Step 2. Tell them about the job, including the pay you offer, what is expected of them, and how long you intend to keep them. Step 3. Some NPCs will turn down your offer, but some will probably accept. If you find one that is acceptable, buy all the equipment the NPC will need. Step 4. Make a retainer sheet to be kept with your character sheet. This should be similar to the character's information, including the retainer's name, class, level, race, armor class, hit points, weapons, and equipment carried, money, experience points, and any other information you wish to remember. Using the retainers. When you check your character sheet to see if you are ready for an adventure, check the retainer sheet at the same time. Remember that you must buy all the equipment that the retainer needs. So, like if you expect the retainer to, have any kind of combat role, they're going to need you to provide them with the necessary equipment for that. If you just need somebody to to look after the horse while you're in the dungeon, they're probably ready to go. And you probably didn't have to negotiate much pay, right? But if you need a guy Friday who's going to be there by your side and just going to swing an axe at things, yeah, you're going to need to equip him and pay him. During the adventure, tell your DM whatever you want to tell the retainer. The DM will play the role of the retainer. A retainer will not simply do whatever you want, though most reasonable instructions will be obeyed. The retainer might run away from danger despite your instructions. This is determined by die rolls made by the DM. And that's a function of your charisma. Because again, remember, way back when we were talking about charisma modifiers, there were morale figures for your retainers and the maximum number of retainers you can have. Higher the morale, because the more charismatic you are, the more likely they'll be able to stick around when things get dodgy. Your retainer does not normally get a share of the treasure found on an adventure. When you hire a retainer, be sure to clearly state the amount you will pay. If you find enough treasure to pay the retainer a bonus, that may make the retainer more loyal. In other words, a well-traded retainer will face greater dangers without running away and will obey your instructions more often. When the DM calculates XP at the end of the adventure, the total XP earned by the group is divided by the number of characters. A retainer gets 1/2 the normal reward and is treated as 1/2 character for the division. Dred Scott of characters. Example, 550 XP are earned by 5 characters and 1 retainer. Dividing 550 by 5.5, counting the retainer as a half a character, results in 100 XP for each adventure and 50 XP for the retainer. Now, I'm going to divert because it's going to get right into what I was going to talk about. You must keep track of the XP for your retainer using retainer sheet. A retainer may have a bonus or penalty to the XP awarded, calculated in the same manner as an XP for characters explained in the Dungeon Master's Rulebook. If, in the example above, if the retainer's prime requisite score was 8, the retainer would only get 45 XP, a 10% penalty. Your retainer may quit the job if treated badly. Otherwise, the retainer will stay either until dismissed by your character or until gaining 1 or more levels of experience. For example, if you hire a retainer for 1 month, the retainer will probably leave at the end of the month. But if the retainer is close to gaining a level, he or she may ask to stay a bit longer. The decision will be up to you. When your retainer quits, give the retainer sheet to the DM. The DM can use that character, and you may meet the retainer again later in another game or in another town. And yeah, there's like level requirements to your retainers, and that's part of the danger of having like a retainer at first level is that if your retainer also, let's say you got a retainer thief for your magic user needs like 3,000 XP, something like 3,000 XP to level up, while the thief only needs 1,250. Even at half XP, the retainer thief could level up before the mage does, in which case the thief will leave your service because it's out-leveled you. But that's a specific example, and it's really about the only time that's really a problem. Let's read the world of D&D gaming, and then we'll finish there. Finding other players. If the Dungeons & Dragons game is much more fun... The Dungeons & Dragons game is much more fun when played by groups than when played alone. Show or lend this booklet to a friend so you can quickly start playing in a group. Each player can learn by playing through the solo adventures just as you did. You will probably be able to find others who already know how to play. Many of the best belong to the official Dungeons & Dragons Club, called the Role Playing Game Association Network. I don't believe they're still around. But I always fancied joining, but I never did. This is the only official D&D club and offers a newsletter, special items, and ways to find other players, and many other services for a small fee, less than the cost of this game. There are many other ways to find other players. Your local hobby shop may have a bulletin board where dungeon masters can post notices of regular games. Your school or library may also have news about players and DMs. Very true, and very of the period. I joined my freshman year in high school a gaming club. And in sophomore year, I became treasurer of that group. And then my junior and senior year, I was president of that group. And so we had to, recruit people for the club. Higher level characters. The dungeons for your characters to explore are often made up by the dungeon master. However, they can also be purchased ready to play. You can buy pre-made adventures called modules from TSR, and some are designed specifically for use with this set of rules. As this is called the basic set, the modules that go with it are the B modules. When your characters reach third level of experience, you should be almost ready for the D&D expert set. It gives more spells, rules for character levels 4 through 14th, and everything you need to improve your games. The modules designed for use with these additional rules are in the X series. The fun continues with D&D Companion Set, which covers characters levels 15 through 24th. Eventually, you'll be ready for D&D Master Set, with rules for characters level 25 and above, which goes to 36. Not specified here. The other modules you may find with many other letter designations are not designed for these rules. They are for use with the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons game system. Other player aids. As you can see, there is much more fun waiting for you in the Dungeons & Dragons game system, and there is even more than games. A whole hobby awaits. Character sheets. You will probably want more character sheets when you start making up many of your own characters. These are available in a separate pack of 16. Be sure to get D&D character sheets, not AD&D sheets, as both are available. At the time, I think they cost about $5 for 16 sheets, which they were nice and nicely printed, but honestly, poor value, even at the time. You could find a photocopier to make copies for you for 25 cents a sheet at the time. And once you had a sheet, basically use that as a master and just make new character sheets. Or use the one back here. Perfectly fine. Or be like my friend and me, and we use a mimeograph machine after we made up a master. Mimeograph. You guys don't even know what a mimeograph is, probably. Dice. More dice can be purchased in sets called Dragon Dice. Oh, geez, those are like $200 now if you want to buy a set of Dragon Dice. Like without the backing or with it falling off. Jeez. Each package includes one of each type, 4-sided, 6-sided, and so forth, plus a crayon to color the numbers with. So yes, this kind of thing, usually under $10. Possibly under 5. Inflation may have killed that aspect, but like this was $9. Right? Miniatures. If you wish, you can purchase toy figures of your characters and monsters too. These figures can help you imagine better because they give you something to look at. Imagine a battle with 7 characters fighting 10 monsters. It's hard to imagine exactly what everybody's doing, so we often use figures to help keep track of where everybody is. If you wish to use miniature figures, be sure to get Dungeons & Dragons or AD&D miniatures. The other game systems do not use the same characters and monsters. Official figures are available for both plastic and metal. If you wish to paint your miniatures with realistic colors, official D&D paints, colors, and finishes are also available at better toy and hobby stores worldwide. Or you do what I did and you just got whatever paint you could get your hands on. A hobby shop usually had a lot of good stuff in the modeling section. But I remember going to a art supply shop to get like my primer because it was cheap, and there were restrictions on who could buy spray paint even back in the 80s. Um, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons games. The AD&D game system is different from the D&D system, which you have now. It is also a fantasy role-playing game, but is much harder and more detailed. There are currently 6 hardback books of the rules for the AD&D system. Since it is so much more complex than the AD&D system with established rules for almost everything, it is often used in large tournaments when accurate rules are needed. Remember, you are not playing the more complex AD&D games with these rules. You are playing the original Dungeons and Dragons game. And there's a whole argument to be made over the complexity and specificity of rules and simulationist theory and all that kind of stuff, which I am not going to get into right now because we are over time. But we'll do one more go because I have that whole section that we just skipped over to read still on the encounter rules and the missile weapons. Essentially, the expanded combat rules here, which are quite important and we should get into, right? So that will be our next part and probably final part of this current series. Thank you very much for your time and your attention. I hope you've appreciated listening to me and the things I have to rattle on about, and I appreciate you taking the time to do that. I do. There are a million things you could be doing with your time nowadays, and for you to give me even a few minutes of your time, I'm grateful. Have a great day, everybody. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.